All right, I'm Scott Adamson, founder of the Production Academy, and during this time, we're in the middle of a work stoppage caused by the coronavirus pandemic. I've been holding a weekly webinar series and inviting different touring colleagues, touring professionals on this webinar to talk about their experiences and expertise and share some things that they've learned about touring and about their jobs, just to kind of open up the dialogue and better talk about this touring industry that we all work in. So last week, I was joined by my friend Tom Pambrun, who's with me again today, and we spoke with our friend Alicia Blake. It was a great conversation, and we talked about specifically the tour manager and front of house position, the combo position that is kind of offered in a lot of small tours. It's a great entry level job if you want to get into touring. But as a follow-up, I thought I'd just invite Tom on here and talk about two of the really important things that tour managers have to think about. Tom, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you coming by and speaking with me.
Pleasure.
All right, great.
Absolutely, man. Happy to do it.
Yeah, last week was a great conversation. It was really fun talking with Alicia and catching up with her. But yeah, I think during that conversation, one of the things that came up the most is advancing and talking about getting ready for the show before you even get to the gig. And during the advanced process, the advancing process is very important for tour managers, but during the advancing process, there are a bunch of questions that you really need to ask the promoter. So you're prepared when you're showed up for the gig, and you arrive and you have things sorted out before they become problems that day. So would you mind running through just a list of topics, some things that people might need to ask in advance before they even get to the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that happens when you get a set of dates from a management company or artist, you have to start talking to all the local promoters, all the local venues, to let them know not only what you're doing, but to find out details about the venue and the show that's going to happen that day. And you have to work together to make sure that you can do everything to make your show happen the right way and just have a smooth day. So the first thing that I do is get the contact info for the local promoter or venue production manager, and I send them an email, which is basically an advance email. It's a pretty straightforward introduction. And it just, it starts off with an introduction, who we are. It includes our current rider, which could be stage plot, input list, hospitality info, all kinds of things like that. It gets bigger depending on the size of show that you're going to be doing. And then we get into the details, and that can be everything from your schedule for the day, like what time do you want to arrive, to park, if it's a bus, a van and trailer, if you have trucks, where are you going to park them? Do you need permits? At what time is the parking available? Then moving into the schedule, your load-in times, your sound check times, what time do doors open? What are your set times going to be, in approximately what time you expect to end? Then moving out of that, when you talk more about the start and the end time, the load in and the load out, how many stagehands do you need? What times do you want them there? How long do you expect to need them there? Are there going to be budget considerations, which is something you get into on larger scale shows? Next thing I want to know is the tech specs for the venue. What's their sound equipment, consoles, speakers, monitors? Do they have in-ear stuff? What's the lighting situation? What kind of lights? How many lights? The lighting console, is there video? All these little things. Well, not even little, but it seems you go over them so quickly. And then if you're carrying any equipment with you, you want to tell them what you're bringing in case you need room at front of house to put an audio console or a lighting console, or you need space on stage for a monitor console. And then you get into talking about the stage, the size of the stage, making sure that everything that you have with you can fit on it. If there's any restrictions, if you need space in the wings, if you need risers, or you're carrying risers. And then you can ask about the barricades along the front of the stage too. That can be a security issue when you start getting into security things, if you need to talk about that for the type of show that you're doing. Then you start to move out of that a little bit more into the tour management and less into the tech world. You can talk about your merchandise, that if you're carrying any, if you have to pay any commissions or taxes to the venue, if you need a vendor, the location, if there's a table, if there's lights, all these little things where at the last minute before doors, all of a sudden you realize you can't see the shirts on the wall because it's not lit up and it's at a little booth in the corner under a staircase or something. You want to confirm the number of guest list spots you have. If there's a VIP area, how many VIP tickets do you get or access to? How many seats in that area? You can talk about the passes. Are you carrying your own passes? Do you have to use the venue passes? Are there photo passes? Are there photo policies? You can really go deep into the weeds on stuff like that. And then to look after hospitality stuff, you can talk about your dressing rooms. How many dressing rooms are there? Depending on how many you need, how you're going to split them up. Do you have showers that work, that are clean? Are there going to be towels? Are there working bathrooms? How do you access the dressing rooms? Do you have to go through the crowd at all? For some people, that's an issue sometimes. Then your dressing room hospitality. Do you have a rider? What's on your rider? Food, drinks, stuff like that. Is there going to be catering for dinner? Are you going to get a dinner buyout instead, like 20 bucks a head or something like that to go buy dinner? And then that covers most of what you need. You can ask for a couple other things. If there's going to be a runner, what time they're going to be there, what kind of vehicle they have, if they're allowed to transport the touring crew at all. Sometimes that's not allowed anymore for insurance reasons. And just follow up on all the contacts for the people you're going to meet the day of, whether it's the stage manager, the production manager, the venue manager, the person you're going to settle the show with. And then if you're going to be settling the show on site, are there any taxes you have to be aware of? Do you have to ask for any paperwork to back up the expenses they're going to charge back, things like that? And with that, you should have a pretty complete picture of what you're going to do for a day. And that one email can answer almost all your questions.
All right, that's great. I mean, all this stuff is really important. And if you're a tour manager and you show up on the day of a show and some of this stuff isn't in place, and you might look really bad. Your show, first of all, might be in jeopardy of happening, but if you're working for a band and you show up and the stuff isn't sorted out, you can look pretty bad as a tour manager. You want to take care of your client really and make sure that their needs are met for the show that day. So
a lot of this stuff you can't figure out the day of. You can't just show up somewhere and say, oh, that lighting rig doesn't look good. Can you get a different one? Like, it doesn't work like that. You have to know what's happening ahead of time.
All right, that's great. And I know you just went through a long list and there's a lot of important stuff there, but there's just a lot there in general. So one of the things we're going to do is provide an email template with all these questions in it and provide a link to that in the notes to this video. So definitely check that out. We'll list through all this stuff. And even if you don't understand all the terminology right away, it'll at least give you a bigger picture about what you need to know before you even get to the venue as a tour manager. So that's great information, Tom. I guess the other thing we talked about that was really important, that is a big job of a tour manager at the smaller tour level, is actually settling shows. So when you settle shows, you need to know what a contract looks like. You need to know the terms in a contract. And you might not even need a contract. You might just need a deal memo. But in either case, you kind of need to understand what you're supposed to be getting paid that day and be able to confidently go and get the amount of money you're supposed to get for the person you're working for. So can you run through maybe what the difference between a deal memo and a contract is, and maybe just some simple terms of a contract?
Yeah, so the main difference between a contract and a deal memo is the contract can be the full 25-page legal jargon document that covers pretty much any single scenario that a booking agent or a manager could be worried about, and a bunch of legal terms that you'll never hear in day-to-day life. The big one that everybody just started talking about now with the current situation is force majeure, which is essentially the act of God clause, which means if something like, say, an international pandemic happens, everybody gets released from the terms of the contract. But the odds of ever having to need any knowledge of that on a show day are pretty slim. You should still be aware of the general template that your booking agency uses for an artist. Go through it when you start working with the artist. If you have any questions, ask the agent, ask the manager. So if anything weird like that ever does pop up, you're ready and you know that it's there and you can address it. Now, the one thing that you're going to use the most and have the most reference to will be a deal memo, which is essentially a summary of the terms of the major points of the contract. And that's everything as basic as the venue and date, the name of the promoter, their contact info, the amount the band is going to be paid, if it's a guaranteed fee, if it's a split of the door, one of 2, 3, 4 different types of deals. And then there's going to be a breakdown of all the expenses that are agreed upon at the start of the deal. And that can be rent for the venue, it can be cost for stagehands, audio, lighting, rental, advertising, security, hospitality, even right down to towels. There can be, anything from 1 or 2 lines to maybe 40 or 50 lines, depending on how complex the show is. And that's what you need to know as a tour manager be the most familiar with, because those expenses that are agreed to in advance are going to be things that you have to check in the settlement.
So can you, just even basic stuff, can you talk about net versus gross and the idea of what a split is in a contract?
Sure. The net versus the gross. So gross is as easy as it sounds. It's the gross number of tickets, gross amount of money, tickets sold. You sell 500 tickets at $20 each, $10,000. That's your gross amount. And some contracts have you being paid on the gross, which could be 85% of the gross, or you split it 60-40, or maybe it's a door deal and you get 70% of the gross. And you just take the total number from the tickets sold and you work from there. When you talk about the net, you take the number of tickets, the amount for the tickets sold, then you have to go through all those expenses I just mentioned, whether it's equipment, rental, stagehands, security, hospitality, things like that. And you take your gross, you subtract all the expenses, and you're left with your net. And then you work from that number. And that can be a split, 85-15 for the artist, or you can have something like a guaranteed fee versus 85% of the net. And if the net is higher than 85% in the guaranteed fee, then you can take that.
All right, that's awesome. I know it kind of gets complicated sometimes, but just even talking about these simple terms really helps. And again, we will include some of these contract terms and the free resources that we're providing with this video. We'll throw a couple sample contracts in so you can actually just get an idea of what a contract looks like for a show. So yeah, Tom, I think this is all really great information. Thanks for coming by and clarifying these points. I think this will be a really good resource for people who are just trying to get started with tour managing, or if they're out there running sound and are getting pulled into the tour manager job as well. Having this type of resource will be great. So thanks for coming by and clarifying some of these topics.
Always a pleasure, man. Happy to talk.
All right. Bye, everybody, and we'll see you on the next video.